I guess what, 2 days ago now, or yesterday, as of recording, I wake up for the second time in my adult life to an ESPN notification that Stefon Diggs has been traded. And I
Yeah.
remember we had this discussion, what, 4 years ago now, just a little bit over 4 years ago. I hit you up and just ranted about just breaking down the Bills roster to decide what do they need to take the next step. And the result was they just need a number one receiver. That's all they need. And then like 2 weeks later, I wake up and they trade for my number one receiver, which has led to a lot of mental gymnastics as like a 20 plus year Bills supporter to then have to like not be a hater because it's like, the ex-girlfriend breaks up with you and then finds someone else, and I will be damned if they put a ring on it before we put a ring on it. So now the mental gymnastics for me are gone as Stefon Diggs moves to the Houston Texans to join C.J. Stroud, Dalton Schultz, Nico Collins, Tank Dell. Looking like a stacked roster. The trade, the Bills sent Diggs a 5th-round pick next year and a 6th-round pick this year for next year's 2nd-round pick that comes from the Minnesota Vikings. So that's a fun little way to tie this all back. But I guess first things first with Diggs, how you feeling? How are the Bills fans feeling? And just from your perspective, being more jacked into the Bills and being in Buffalo, what happened?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a mixed bag, honestly. The initial reactions were like I was at work, and our buddy Matt, who works at ESPN in New York, texted me before the news even broke, and that's what was breaking at that moment. And so then I think I was like off doing something I shouldn't have been doing, like wandering the halls, so I didn't have to be at my desk. And by the time I came back, it was everywhere. And I think the reactions were interesting because for the people that I talk to that are kind of always talking about this kind of stuff, always up to date with things and having the discussions and throwing out their garbage opinions or their good opinions or whatever kind of opinion wants to come out of their mouth at any given time, because that's what's exciting in the moment. Those kinds of people, I feel like, were less upset about it, I guess. Like, whereas the people like that clearly just watch it during the season, they don't think about it otherwise, and if they're not doing well, they're like, I'm done with the Bills, I'm not watching them for the rest of the season. Those kinds of people, they were very upset. And so it's kind of an interesting dichotomy there, in that people that are more jacked in, I feel like, saw it coming a bit. And it's not even the seeing it coming, it's more of the not super surprised and also not super disoriented by it, because at the end of the day, we're coming fresh off of a season that was chaotic at best. Like in the middle of the season, we're suddenly JV high school football players, and nothing's going right, nothing's working. We're losing when we shouldn't be losing. And then we come back and make this great run that I was convinced was a sign, that if this happens, if these things happen, if we somehow become the division champions after all that, then we're winning the Super Bowl. You can't tell me otherwise. And
I felt the same way. I had a lot of money down on it.
Yeah, and it didn't go that way, obviously. But, I do think a part of why it didn't go that way was honestly not having that star wide receiver that we had become accustomed to, that we relied on in the way that we rely on Josh Allen. Like for a couple seasons there, that was their show, right? And then last season it was the Josh Allen show. Don't get me started on the MVP bullshit, but it was the Josh Allen show because it had to be, and there's a reason it had to be. Like Gabe Davis wasn't, doing things in the way that his trajectory said he might. Diggs was really important in a different kind of way, in that he drew people away from, guys like Kincaid or Shakir, and gave them more of an opportunity because he's being double teamed all the time, right? And that's important, but at the end of the day, like if you are that guy, you still have to show up big in those moments. And the last play for the Buffalo Bills, his last major play that was a make it or break it for that Chiefs game, he just straight up dropped the ball, right? He like literally dropped the ball, went right through his hands. And it's one of those things where there's a whole array of situations and scenarios throughout the years that he was with us, and a lot of them were ups, but it's easy in these times to remember those downs, and I especially in the reaction to it. So like my initial reaction was, okay, what did we get? Like that was my very first thought, was what did we get? Because I wasn't that upset about it. It's like for the last couple of seasons, I think I've even said to you, like all this drama in the off season is becoming not worth it. Like,
well, that's the thing is it, because I feel like I felt a similar way when the Vikings traded him, and obviously he was younger then. He had just signed a new contract, and there was a lot of cryptic tweets. He's the king of cryptic tweets. The other day I was talking to someone and I compared him to, I said he was the Sylvia Plath of Michael Jordan's, that he has that Jordan ability to like invent fiction in his mind to motivate himself, but in the way that Jordan or Kobe, they would use that as like to get like fierce, and I don't know, I don't have a better term than fierce, to get fierce in the field of battle. Diggs was more moody with it, and it felt like he was processing it in a way that kind of, it was more detrimental to the team environment, I think, than the type of stuff that Michael Jordan would do. But I do want to touch on something you'd said in talking about Diggs and the value of the number one receiver, and not just him catching what I think 6 straight 1,000-yard seasons, and then 5 of the last 6 he had 100 catches, and then also clearing things out for Kincaid, clearing things out for, I guess now whoever else is on the roster, Khalil Shakir. But I would point out that with the gaping void that they do have now, and I feel like wide receiver was still kind of a need for them with Gabe Davis leaving. Even if Gabe Davis didn't leave, like he's still,
even if he didn't leave, we needed a replacement for what he was supposed to be, honestly.
But you look at the Packers last year, moving on from Aaron Rodgers, they traded Devontae Adams the year prior. You look at the Chiefs and what they did last year, essentially with just Travis Kelce, Rashee Rice came on late in the year and in the playoffs, but the receivers they weren't just like mid-level replacement guys. They were actively fucking up, more or less. Or even the Ravens, like I like Zay Flowers a lot, but rookie, his style of play in that offense, like he's not really a true alpha, at least not yet. So could the Bills actually benefit from this in the sense of like Kirk Cousins last year with my Vikings when Jefferson went down with the injury? Mm-hmm. He almost started playing a little more freely because there's not this feeling of like, got to get the ball to Justin Jefferson, or like it's been 2 series since he's had a catch, we got to get him involved. That you could kind of just naturally go about the offense without feeling like you need to not serve a player. And we know receivers can be divas and all that, but just to not have to have a certain pecking order with Josh Allen now at the height of his powers. Is there a chance, do you think, that this actually could, from a personnel standpoint and how they run their scheme and their offense, could it be a benefit? Because they played their best ball last year when Diggs was kind of not removed from the offense, but he wasn't necessarily the focal point.
Right, he wasn't the centerpiece on that end. Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting because I obviously don't know for sure, but my feeling is that when we had that conversation way back when he was traded from the Vikes, it was, we needed that, and there was several elements to that need, but one major element was that Josh was still very green, And he was just then in that moment becoming what people were seeing as a star quarterback, right? Like it wasn't that there wasn't this big gap of time between when people were saying he was a joke and wasn't going to last to that season where like it went well, right? But we needed something more. And so that we needed that, and I think he needed that for his confidence. He needed the guy to be able to pull in some of those balls that may not be placed completely accurately, or make a play out of what might be nothing. Like he needed that for himself as a leader on the team, I think. And now we're looking at a completely different Josh Allen, in my opinion. Just in terms of progress, like there's still mistakes happening, but he has never been more in control of sort of who he is as a quarterback on this team. And I think, well, first of all, I think it's beneficial no matter what to have one of those guys, one of those star wide receivers. But at the end of the day, like right now, we can do more with less than we ever could with Josh Allen as center. So, I don't see it as a major negative from that perspective. Like I said before, like my reaction wasn't even, oh my God, we lost our guy. It was, what did we get? And I was way more upset about what we got than what we lost. So it
all right,
was,
well, let's talk about the trade value then, because you guys got the Vikings second round pick in 2025.
Yep.
Gave up a 5th and a 6th and Diggs. And I mean, I get on the surface why Bills fans are like, what? That's it? Like, because you gave up what, a 1 and a 3 to the Vikings? I should know this. I mean, they gave up the one that turned into Justin Jefferson. And I still think it's arguably one of the best even trades of all time. Like you
100%.
got 4 years of all pro level play out of Stefon. Like 2 of those years, he was probably the best receiver
at his prime. Yeah.
But no, yeah, I will say this, that I mean, I maybe trim off the 5th round pick. I would have tried to fight to keep that. But I don't honestly think it's bad value. I get why it's perceived that way now, but you look at like, and I should have pulled this up before we got on here live, but like DeAndre Hopkins, what he was traded for, like once receivers kind of hit that 29, 30-year-old mark, that trade value goes pretty far down, pretty drastically.
Yeah.
And the second, I'm a massive second round fan. It's the first round kind of gets a little overhyped because they're at whatever facility that they're doing the draft at now. It used to be Radio City Music Hall, and everyone's there with their suits and they go on stage and they got the jersey and these are the guys that are going to save the franchise. But the second round is like as valuable a lot of the time. Like you might not be getting these superstar prospects, but there's a lot of, especially this year. And I mean, their extra pick is next year, but you could flip that into a day 3 pick this year if you wanted and find someone that wants to move off of it. But I don't know. It's also hard because it's fake money at this point. Like you have no idea what it's going to turn into. Like we traded Randy Moss for a 1st round pick, a 7th round pick, and Napoleon Harris. And the 1st round pick turned into Troy Williamson, who was a very fast, very athletic, super skilled wide receiver who just couldn't catch the ball. And then we trade Diggs, we get a 1st round pick, and we get Justin Jefferson, who is on pace to be the greatest of all time, with no offense to Jerry Rice. But I don't know, you just kind of got to wait and see how it plays out. But yeah, I think that maybe the slept on aspect of it is that they got to eat $31 million and change on the cap this year, which kind of sucks. But then right now they're projected, according to Over the Cap, to have $27.4 million in cap space next year before any restructures or anything. And that's before whatever the cap is expected to jump. So you're going to add another 20 to 30 million on there. So they are freeing up some space next year to re-sign some people they might need to and pursue free agents. So does that assuage any of that immediate kind of like, what the fuck? Like, that's all we got for this?
Yeah. I mean, yes and no. I think like for me, it's like at the end of the day, some of the greatest players of all time came from those later, you know, rounds. So, you know, second, third, fourth, fifth, Tom Brady sixth, right? Like, it's not necessarily that for me. It's the 2025, but also giving up two others, one from this year, um, that bothered me. I think the most is that, and that like I felt like we were not giving away the farm because, like I've said, like I don't see it as a negative to our team necessarily. I think it actually was the right time, but I feel like there was a way to get something or just more of something that was easier to use to our advantage. Like, you know, even like you were saying, you also got a guy out of it during the Moss trade, right? So there's other pieces to play on the chessboard besides just the one, and I'm worried that in the if we don't do anything with it, we don't make moves with any of these components, that what's the unknown factor there? What's going to happen until we're able to take advantage of that you know, trade return? I don't know. It's all very unknown, and I think that's what it is too. And Bills fans, the unknown for us is horrifying because we went through, you know, 20 years of you know, that kind of unknown. Will next year, will something happen, right? And so I think a part of it too is that like trauma response of like, okay, this is starting to feel like a rebuild thing. We've done this many times, right? Like what we're getting rid of all of our defense. We're getting rid of you know, Gabe Davis and Diggs. We're stripping things down, and that feels rebuildy. And I think that the last time we rebuilt worked because we got Josh Allen and we made, you know, and McDermott was a huge part of that being, but, and they're obviously a huge part of that now, but I don't know if the timing feels right for me. It feels like either Bean's cooking something fantastic or I don't know what the fuck's going on.
Well,
and I think
the flips.
that's my reaction to it.
Okay. Well, the flip side is, I mean, if Diggs is putting your hands to the fire and saying like, I don't want to be here, and there's never been that. Like, it's interesting because, you know, like when they traded for Diggs, probably day one, I was telling you like, hey, you got to watch out for this guy. Like, you never know when he's just gonna go crazy
Yeah,
and
you were bitter.
demand a trade.
You're so
And yeah,
bitter, and you were like going in on it, and I was like, okay, and
yeah, and it probably was purely out of bitterness at that point. And then over the years, like literally 2 or 3 days ago, I found myself thinking like, I think this Diggs thing is a bit at this point. I think it's a work. I think the Bills know that he's just out here working the marks online and nothing serious. And like, because then everyone talks about, oh, his relationship with Josh Allen and blah blah blah. And I mean, you know, you see him yell on the sideline, but every NFL player in the history of football has yelled on the sideline at some point, and they've never said anything otherwise. And Josh Allen is, you know, an incredibly nice human, or at least he comes across that way. He's very kind to
Consummate,
us.
he's very professional as
Yeah.
well in
So
that regard.
he's never gonna like give you anything. It's always gonna be like, you know, I just got to do more to for blah 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 because he's a great leader and quarterback. But is there anything to that relationship that you can perceive? Like from the outside looking in, it just always felt like the national media just looking for something because they just haven't been able to get over that last hump. But do you think that there's a thing there, or is this just Diggs kind of being Diggs?
I think it's really tough to tell because there are so many narratives out there, and like then as soon as those narratives come, like you've always got those guys like Colin Coward, and you know, you've got people out there saying shit like, you know, this is my inside scoop. This is what happened. Josh Allen was 100% behind this. You know, all that kind of thing. you have no idea, because then they come out and say that's not true. How could you possibly really know? I can tell you that there are definitely like Bills Mafia conspiracy theories a little bit, where ever since that playoff game where Josh just completely screwed the pooch and
The Cincinnati game?
Yeah, Bengals ran all over us. And like all of the behind the scenes shit that came out about that,
because him and his fiance broke up the night before.
Yeah. Right? They had this massive fight. The police were called because he got some bartender pregnant or something. And again, who knows if that's even true, but I've heard from people that know the bartender that it is, but still, it's one of it's just noise. But now
that's some good inside information, people.
I mean, it's still possible bullshit, but everyone likes to say, "Oh, I know this person that knows that guy." Like, maybe not.
Well, now I know the guy who knows the guy who knows the guy who
right.
knows that this is true. So
I also heard from someone. I also heard from someone recently that they dated Tyrod Taylor when he was the Bills quarterback, and they were a bartender, and I'm like, maybe. Like I take it all with a grain of salt, but all I'm saying is,
hey, good for them. He's a good-looking man.
Yeah. Those things are all noise at the time. They continue to be noise, and then you start to see a little bit of a pattern. That's where the conspiracy theories are coming in. Like from that moment, when it was kind of the perception was that Josh dropped the ball that game from pretty much everybody, right? And obviously as a team, but he's the leader, and it was not a good game for him. And then you hear that there was behind the scenes stuff. So it's like, oh, okay, so he wasn't in the game. And so then you start to see that divide between him and Diggs in the offseason. You start to see little things. That's when Diggs really started going ham on the internet. And all these things start to play out. And then last offseason, Diggs doesn't show up to help me out here. OTAs.
One of those.
Something that was required that he show up for. It wasn't an optional one. And that created this huge frenzy, right? And then so many things came out about that who knows if they're true or not, but you start to connect all these dots and you start to see the difference. And like before all this happened, by the way, they were on like the cover of like Sports Illustrated, like basically making out with each other. You know what I mean? Like they were like boys or brothers. It was, and then you don't get that same sense in conversation when they're talking about each other, when they ask questions about each other. The whole thing starts to feel wishy-washy from that game. And it just sort of gradually became this thing where it's like, okay, maybe it's true. Maybe Josh was like, I'm done with this shit. Like he wants to go. Clearly Bean and McDermott have their own agenda. Obviously it's not probably even, I was going to say it's not all on Josh. It's probably not even on Josh much at all, but I think he is at that level where I'm sure they're having conversations with him as well. So people have that theory that is a part of this, that it just sort of disintegrated. And when they were on together, they were on, and if they're not going to be on together anymore, they're not going to jive in that way, then I guess it makes sense. But who knows? I mean, I think that every fan base thinks that they know like these inside scoops. I don't really believe that necessarily. I just know that the vibes were not there anymore across the board. It did not feel like he was really even a part of the team anymore in that way. Like it you can only, especially after the whole shit with his brother, with like get him out of there, and he's like, I'm not responsible for what my brother says. And I'm like, I mean, you sit down with him at Thanksgiving, you do Christmases together. His son's.
You could tell him
uncle.
Hey, like, Trevon, shut the fuck up. Like, get out of my business in public, bro.
But then on the flip side, like that confidence to post that, maybe it just came from sheer athlete confidence, but like, it's like he knew something, right? Like, it's like they've had these conversations in private and he couldn't fucking help himself but say something out loud.
I have a timeline of Diggs' cryptic tweets that I
Oh, hell yeah. And can we go through them?
Yeah, we got.
All right, hold on. Let me prepare for this.
Yeah, there you go. I got some tweets from his time with Minnesota from the offseason starting February 5th through February 9th. I don't
Okay.
remember the exact date he was traded, but some things are better left unsaid. ... Then on February 6th, I don't forget or forgive. ... Then February 7th, I hate people that do you wrong, then try to play the victim. ... Then February 9th, people don't appreciate things until they're gone. ...
Oh,
And then, sure enough, they go and trade him. And now here for the
wait,
Bills,
what's the timeline on that? What was I don't even
I
remember the date.
neither do I.
Okay.
I guess it was about a month before that, before he got
Gotcha.
traded. And now looking at his timeline of cryptic tweets starting March 15th, which was just a few weeks ago, a heart emoji, then ready for whatever,
Yep.
then well, ... followed by March 25th, being diligent. So I don't know. He kind of brings this shit on himself, and I don't know what's true. And like, if listen, if Trevon Diggs saying get him out of there, like get why? Where's he going that's better than that?
Right.
Unless you're going to the Chiefs, where the hell are you going? Where are you going?
It
What are
was
you gonna
a
go?
really ridiculous thing across the board because like yeah, we were in a drought in that season at that moment, but like it's still a drought for us. It was still not bad. Like we were still a contender team, right? Like so it really none of it made sense. And to your point, like the Chiefs there's more than just the Chiefs you could go to make that something special, but not very many teams, right? Like to be able to infuse yourself in and make that jump worth it. So it was like he was talking about us as if we were, you know, the Browns from that year that they gave away free beer if they fucking won a game.
Or
You
even
know,
like when he left the Vikings, part of why I was so upset about it is denial of the problems that we did have. And there was much made about Kirk, and he had said multiple times that he had no issue with Kirk. And I do kind of believe that. I think his issue was in the offense because it just wasn't. If Mike Zimmer wanted to run the ball all the time, and then you find out after the fact Zimmer and Spielman weren't even on speaking terms, and that's just a terrible environment to be in. And like in retrospect, I look at him like, I kind of don't blame him. Him and Thielen are 1A, 1B. Who's the one? 2017, Thielen had better stats, or in 2018, and I get it. I get it from an ego standpoint. I get it from a winning standpoint, culture standpoint. But with the Bills, it's like all you hear from them is this is like the premier culture in the league, except when Diggs is doing stuff. And that just kind
exactly.
of I don't know. I don't want to harp on Diggs too much, but
No, but I think that is a really great point though, and that like our culture as a team, like in the locker room, you know, all the way to the fan base, but like there's like this unity in a way that's like palpable. Like I've heard from many different fan bases, many different people that like that's the vibe that people get, like that's the understanding. And there was never anything about except for McDermott's very strange and weird comments about 9/11, but
he was in his bag for that one. I don't know if it wasn't the right bag, but
but you know, other than like weird things like that, or like when Josh got signed, like literally 2 hours before the draft, comes out that he made racist tweets when he was in high school, and you know, like
it's always like right before the draft.
Yeah. But like aside from like these very specific moments, like there's never been any kind of chatter about that, except for like you said, when Diggs is just because like you read tweets from right before he left Minnesota, right before he left Buffalo. There are so many others in between that are just like so bizarre, like just stuff that like I don't know if you remember, but there was I forget the exact verbiage, but he was saying things that I think it was around last year when he didn't show up for the mandatory, and that
yeah,
he was saying shit about clearly Josh Allen. Like you know, like you fake it and make it seem like this, but it's not, or whatever. Just I can't remember what
That's
exactly.
the thing with Diggs.
Is
You can look at any tweet that Diggs ever makes and say, this is definitely about the team, or this is about the quarterback. And then you think about it for 10 seconds, like, maybe it's about a woman in his life.
Like,
it's
that's true.
He's the greatest cryptic tweeter of all time. Hall of Fame,
That's
first
right. That's
ballot,
fair.
no question. Unbelievable.
100%.